Let's now talk about cross-cultural communication and pragmatics, as well as their relation to critical discourse analysis. There would hardly be any doubt that cross-cultural communication is one of the important fields of contemporary pragmatics, especially in the world which is getting cross or intercultural with every day. We are witnessing more interaction between people belonging to various cultures. Therefore, the issue or the topic of cross-cultural communication becomes very important every new day. Participants in the contemporary world, they interact and they interact when they are not sharing the same native language. They are belonging to various languages, or they speak various languages at their hometowns, but they interact with each other. Even cross-culture communication happens at our home places also, or at our indigenous places, because there is a frequency of people visiting each other in the contemporary world as compared to the past. And then social media is another medium or other media which make people interact with each other, which was not possible in the past. Such huge interaction with people has made cross-cultural communication an important topic in general, as a skill for communication, as well as a part of pragmatics, and now also as a part of critical discourse analysis, because this kind of communication can lead to various pragmatic failures, and based on the issues of comprehension and production, as well as understanding of pragmatic meanings in a certain context. In such situation, we need to view that cross-cultural communication can be an important component of critical discourse analysis, because it would help us in understanding not only pragmatic failures, but various aspects of how power is negotiated in such global or international interactions. Moreover, cultural differences on which cross-cultural communication thrives or is based on also include socio-cultural dimensions of these differences, as well as some ethnic, group, educational, and other features of people, which always come into play when people belonging to various cultures or dimensions interact with each other. That diversity, cultural diversity, is not regards or not related to the linguistic element only, that is dialects or accents, but it is also related to divergent socioeconomic, educational, class-based, and historical influences which people always carry along with them. So their backgrounds, their historical, political backgrounds are also very important. So culture becomes an accumulative term which is not related to certain pieces of or certain markers of identity also. Rather, it's an overall background of a speaker which he always carries with him or herself, and it includes his or her socioeconomic, political, historical and educational background also. There can be different ways of thinking about culture. For example, Pillar argues that culture is an ideological construction. So culture is not something which is purely academic. We read a definition of culture in a book and we apply it on people. Culture is rather seen through a certain prism which we always carry, which means that I, being a human being living in a certain culture, following a certain culture, may have a certain view of about certain norms and beliefs, and may have certain ideas about certain ways of living. And whenever I look something different, I will look from that perspective, and I would declare something different only when I look at it from my own perspective. Otherwise, it won't appear to me as different. So people always carry such point of views which are a part of their ideology. And these ideological constructions actually make culture. Culture itself, according to Pillar, is an ideological construction. That also means that there, whatever we call the cultural construction, there could be other possible ways to look at it. There could be other cultural constructions. There cannot be only one cultural construction of one thing. Rather, there could be other views to have a look at it. And from a different perspective, it might have a different orientation. Then we all know that these constructions have to be different because cultures vary in all possible dimensions. They vary in time. We see even in the same society, cultures vary from time to time. Even in subcontinental part where we are based now, which is called Pakistan, this area, this geographical reality we live in, probably had a different culture a century or 2 centuries ago, when we had frequent interactions with our neighboring countries, probably when we were not independent. So it's altogether a different culture. If not altogether, there are some clear indications of change which we can see in our culture. Then cultures also vary in space. They vary from one geographical entity to another. Culture of Pakistan may be different from cultures of other countries, so they vary in space also, and scale also. Some cultures are deep and some cultures are not that deep, and there could be other theoretical as well as practically deep classifications or differences of cultures also. There are cultures of cities, states, countries, and even continents and subcontinents. So cultures vary in every possible dimension. One of the ideas how to talk about culture, or on what culture depends upon, is its ideological assumptions. Every culture thrives on certain ideologies, which also cause certain kind of politics in that culture also. So culture always have certain ideologies upon which they are based. Pillar has a three ways of dividing cultures or studying cultures. One can be comparative analysis of 2 or more cultures. We can place various value sets of cultures side by side and see what kind of differences do they carry. I mean, one culture would regard male-female interaction in a certain way, other would regard in another way, etc., etc. Then there could be another way of analyzing interactions between speakers from different cultural backgrounds. There could be another possible way to see cultural differences, both from pragmatic as well as from critical discourse analysis perspective. This is very important because we see how people from various cultures actually build or rebuild their power relations, and we can do so by analyzing their interactions with each other. Then the discourse of creation of culture, how cultures are created and as an ideology through a discourse. Let's look these points into a bit of detail. The first point, which is about the comparative analysis of various cultures, is based on assumption that cultures are assumed to exist, and then some interactional aspects of them are usually studied in such studies. So, as I said earlier, various cultures are placed side by side, and their similar and distinguishing features are highlighted. These studies are very common in theology, in anthropology, and in sociology. Interactional analysis are more common in linguistics, especially in pragmatics and cross-cultural communication, as well as in critical discourse analysis. They look into and compare various aspects of interactions and how certain ideologies are promoted or enacted through interactions in such conversations. And if we have to look for specific examples in relation to CDA for such studies, we can see we have the works of John Gompas, Deborah Tannen, and their students have also done a lot of work in relation to cross-cultural communication and critical discourse analysis. The third is culture is assumed to construct some kind of identity. Cultures are assumed to construct some typifications which become particular to a certain certain culture. This is what we can say, that the discourse about a culture constructs certain identities of that culture, certain typifications, norms, values, people's behaviors in that culture, and people look at that culture from that perspective. For example, this can be seen through various social media projections of those cultures, various views about those culture in mainstream media, in newspapers, in advertisements of the channels, and such discourses can be constructed all the time based on certain assumptions about a culture. For example, a typical tourist guide about a certain country would include certain important cultural dimensions of that particular destination for the possible or prospective visitors. And for example, they might advise people to be on time, since in various situations they want to travel to, or if they want to meet to certain people, they need to be punctual, because in that culture punctuality is a value and is respected. Therefore, this is how we, for example, in Pakistan, there is a common perception that people in Western countries are more punctual than us. So this is a kind of typification which we have created about Western culture. So we look at different cultures from such typifications. Now, why CCP or cross-cultural communication is important and how it is relevant to critical discourse analysis. I have hinted about it earlier also, that cross-cultural communication is very important in the contemporary globalized world, where people from belonging to various cultures are interacting more frequently as compared to the past. And more important, this needs a kind of harmonious cross-cultural communication. If we have a disharmony in communication, we would probably result into a kind of a failed world. If we cannot communicate our problems, our ideas, thoughts, our desires with each other, we probably would not make a better mankind on earth. So cross-cultural communication has a very clear social objective. Similarly, it also is related to power relations in the world also. People belonging to various cultures respond to certain situations in a certain way, and that not only show their identity, their ideology, but also their power relation with the readers, with the speakers they are interacting with. Cross-cultural communication, that is also considered to be very important in education for the reason because it would draw our attention to mismatch of interactional norms between the speakers of various cultures. It can help us in identifying various aspects of biased or sexual connotations of the language, which can be counterproductive and could probably hurt somebody's overall ideologies or feelings. And there are also differences in the terms of group power in the world we belong to. So cross-cultural communication also relate to group power also. And that probably is a very key point where it becomes very close to critical discourse analysis. Critical discourse analysis thrives on such agendas where we need to see the power and how power is enacted through discourse. So cross-cultural communication probably can be one potential database as well as one potential means to know how powers are negotiated when people belonging to various cultures interact with each other. For example, we can see that how people from a popular culture assert their power when they interact with the people from some less popular or less developed cultures. So that can be one possible scheme, one possible way of looking at cross-cultural communication in the contemporary world. And also in relation to critical discourse analysis. In sociolinguistics, the word culture is not defined with the capital C, which means a kind of literature, music, art of a speech community. Rather, it is seen with other definition of culture, which is that it reflects the values and beliefs about the world which are held by a community, because these values and beliefs actually form the substratum of their daily life also. These values and beliefs are responsible for many of their actions also, thoughts, and also, and more importantly, from the perspective of critical discourse analysis, how they view other people, how they view certain events in their community, and how they make their worldview which includes not only the negotiation of meaning, but also negotiation of the power in the society. So that is why we can safely say that cross-cultural communication, which is a key component of pragmatics, can be an important way to look into critical discourse analysis of various cross-cultural communications.